I'm Richard Brownlie-Marshall and I'm the Senior Creative at Pret A Manger, working for the brand around the world in all areas of design, from marketing campaigns, interiors, products and packaging. Today I'm going to be giving some top tips and advice on presenting design work to showcase all your great design thinking and concepts. I'm going to start by looking at it in a broad sense and then get into a bit more of the structure. From a visual perspective, I think there's some important things to remember. In design presentations, I always believe that words should be kept to a minimum because as creatives, we've got so many tools and mediums that are so much more stimulating and inspiring than just lines of black and white text on a page. Think visually. If you're wanting to showcase research, you could create an infographic out of icons showing facts and figures. Or if you've done some user testing, could you use photos of it in action? Could you actually produce a video that fully demonstrates your concept and showcases all its key features? Think of the design process so far and think what would tell the story of your concept in its best light. I'm talking mood boards, sketches, 3D renders. You might have already even done these, so you can use them in your presentation to visually show the development of your product. My next tip would be not to be afraid of white space. Have you ever heard the phrase that you can't see the wood for the trees? Well, that very much applies here, as good design work can be lost in a sea of information where the client doesn't know where to look. Make sure there's a key point of focus for your audience and a natural flow to every page and the presentation overall. If you've got a really great visual, make sure it has room to shine. For inspiration, you could look at design and fashion magazines and see how they create their beautiful editorial stories. So now looking at the structure, and I do really think that design presentations are all about the storytelling and taking your client on that journey through all that great design thinking and work that you've put into this project. And one way to tell this story is to start at the beginning and, spoiler alert, end up on the big product reveal. So at the start, you could focus on the brief and how you're going to tackle it. And one way you could do this is to create a one-sentence mission statement setting your goal for the project. Then you can look at the research you did, remembering to state what you learned from the research and how it influenced your final concept. Again, think of interesting ways to present this, such as photos or quotes from people you might have interviewed, or even sketches showing the different development stages. And then you end with the big finish, your final concept. I'd normally keep this really simple and clean, so having a final visual on a page by itself, really letting it take centre stage. If the idea is web-based or an app, it's always good to give it some context, so you might want to mock it up on a phone screen or on a desktop. If movement or interaction is integral to your concept, maybe something like animation or video is the best way to showcase it. And then once you've done the concept reveal, it's also good to look at the key features and functions at a little bit more of a close level. If you're doing a video, this is where you can show those close-ups and interactions. On a spread, you could have close-up photography or visuals with just a few lines of explanation. Once you've completed the presentation, it's good to have that full circle moment where you look back at the brief and the goal that you set out at the beginning and check that you've answered it. Everything on the page should be adding value to the project, plus adding that little bit of extra good design thinking that you've been doing. You could end on highlighting opportunities for the project or also maybe next steps. If you've got time, you could even engage potential users or industry experts with your final concept and then include short quotes of their feedback just to back up your design thinking. When sending off a presentation, it's important to remember that this is probably the first time that the client has seen any of this work. So make sure you're not missing out chunks of the thinking that help for the overall understanding of the project. A good way to combat this is to share your final presentation with someone that's not involved in the project and see what kind of questions they have and their overall understanding of the final concept. And anything that comes up, you can add it in before you send it off. The final note to end on is that although you want this to be a professional presentation, that doesn't mean it has to be a boring one. I think it's important that it feels engaging and has personality. You want your pitch to be memorable for the client. So make sure your presentation answers the brief and then some, looks clean and engaging, and fully showcases your great design thinking.